have a seat. Man, I always love having great worship services. I don't always like preaching after them because I'm like, let's just go home now, you know? Like that was good enough. So my name is Justin. I am the associate pastor here. So this is the third of three in a series of the family. So we are going to. Let me just back up and say this. I think every time I come up here, I say, I love to teach the Word of God. Not because I think I'm good at it, not because people go, hey man, you pat me on the back when I'm done, but I will tell you, the Word of God, I would be lost without it. It has been my northern star from the time I was 17 years old until 50. I haven't known what to do. And above all else, I walk through, we're going to go through parenting today. I would say, man, there is no place where I would have been greaterly lost. There you go. Well, that doesn't make sense, but greaterly lost than in the place of parenting. But I will say, it's an amazing book. Some of the passages we're going to go look at today were written 3,500 years ago. And we're going to go, they're not specific in some of those things. Yeah, you can't be specific. We're talking about parenting 3,500 years ago before people could read. There's no electricity. And yet, I pick it up and I go, it's so relevant today. Just follow it, do what it says. And how do you write that book that will cross millenniums, third world countries and first world countries, and it still be applicable and work? It blows my mind. It just does. And so we're going to dive in and look at it today. When it comes to parenting, where I'm at, I just want to tell you and try to be vulnerable sometimes. I do my best to be that. And so Laura and I, we've got two kids. One who is 16 and sitting right over here. He's still in our home. The other one is 18, and we just launched her. We let go of the arrow. She is at UNF, and it has its whole group of problems that go with that. And I'm telling you, we are at a place where parenting just took a massive turn for us. There are times where I go, I don't even know what I'm doing now. I kind of thought when you let go of the arrow, we're done, right? And here's me being, I'll tell you how stupid I am. I had people along the way that would be like, dude, parenting adults is harder than parenting. I got a light flickering at me. I'm trying to figure out which one it is. Parenting adults is so much harder than parenting little kids. And in my brain, the whole way, I'm like, yeah, because you didn't do it right. Well, yeah, I'm reaping the consequences of those thoughts right now. It's work. It's work all the way through. Also, man, I feel sorry for anybody who has to, I feel sorry for my kids that are going to have to raise kids in this generation. And yet I look back and go, do you think there was ever a time when parenting was easy? I don't think so. I don't think that's ever existed. I will tell you, I'm at a place now in the walk where I'm looking back on some things. And Gracie being in Jacksonville, it has created some nostalgia in me. And I will tell you, if I could go back in time, I think, I can go through some specific things that we used to do. I had this little bear that was a bunch of different multicolored bear. We called it Gracie Bear. I'm going to try and get through this without getting too emotional. But this was a dad thing. And I would always go, boing, boing. And then I would go, ah! And I would do that over and over and over again, and she just laughed and laughed. I could do it with her when she was in middle school. and she loved it. I don't know when the last time I did that was, but I can tell you, if you could go back and somebody would go, hey, time out. This is the last time. You'll never do this again. I think I would have done it until she fell asleep. We moved here, and I would drive my son to school every day, and it was the bane of my existence. I had to drive him over to Osceola, and the traffic was terrible, and then I had to go get him every day. Hated it. Broke up my day. I got to rub shoulders with my kid every day. We talked about the pain of going through middle school every day. And when middle school was over, I was like, praise the Lord. He's going to Forest, and Gracie will drive him. I think if in my brain I would have realized, you're never going to have those conversations in the car again. I wouldn't have celebrated not having to drive him. I would have said, let's go do ice cream. And let's just sit and talk. Because I don't have those times in my life anymore. Let me tell you this, parents. If you have young kids, it goes fast. You have a window of impact on your children, and you will not look back on it and go, man, I wish I would have spent less time with my child. You won't. Ask anybody in here who has adult kids. They will tell you, dude, that impact is fading. And it's changed for me drastically. I still have impact on my children, there's no doubt, but it changes drastically. All right, I was kind of got a little bit out of whack there. So parenting. So most of us, we dive into parenting and we do one of two things, and I say most of us just do what we were shown. We do what our parents kind of taught us to do, what they did, what worked, or some of us are really angry at how our parents did it, and we're going to do the complete opposite of that. It's usually one of those things. And then we kind of go through life in crisis management, right? This works. Hey, I'm not touching it. We're good. I don't want to mess with anything. And then some crisis blows up, and we've got to change, and we've got to do some things different. What I want to do today is look at what God says about it. I don't want to give you my opinions. I just want to go to the Word of God, because that's who we are as a church. We go back to the Word, and we see what does God say, and these are things that have been around for 3,000 years, okay? And we believe they are just as relevant today as they were 3,000 years ago. So we've been in Ephesians chapter 5. We've come through husbands, we've come through wives, wives and then husbands. And after last week, I wanted to go back and hit the wives again, but the passage didn't let me, okay? Really wanted to. It felt right. So it goes to the relationship between parents and children. And so it jumps into chapter 6, Ephesians chapter 6. There are 4 verses. We're going to read through those. I'm going to pray, and then we'll dive into it. So Ephesians chapter 6. Verse 1 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. Lord, I love you. Man, I pray that you'd settle my soul today and you'd allow us to just look at the word and see what you have for us and just guide us today. And give us wisdom. I pray that your spirit would move here in ways that can only be explained by your spirit. And I pray that you would challenge us where we need to be challenged. We love you. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen. All right, so the bulk of these 4 verses really talks to children. And I'll say this, I'm not going to spend the bulk of my message talking to children because most of the children are on the other side of that wall. Okay? And they're hearing this message in an appropriate way on the other side of that wall. And so I'm going to blast through it. And I know we have some teens in the room, and we will talk. They'll hear it. But if you go through the first 3 verses, it says this, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. He gives you 2 reasons why you should obey your parents. 1, because it's what? Because it's right. And I know, teens, you hate hearing that, right? Because I said so. You hear that 100 times? 100 times a week. You hear that 100 times. You hear that over and over and over again in your life. Because I said so. But what God says is this: do it because it's right. Now listen, I'm not going to make it up. I'm not going to water it down. That's what he says. It's the right thing to do. And the second thing he says is this: do it because it's in your best interest. Okay? Now listen, I'm going to go through, and there's going to be a lot of application as we run through it. And we're going to look at what obedience is. That's a good piece for you guys. And we're going to also, I will talk about why it's in your best interest. But what he says is this: why do you obey your parents? Because they're good people and they're wise and they know what they're talking about. No. Sometimes we're idiots. Sometimes we're led by our flesh. Sometimes we are angry people. Sometimes we don't do things for the right reasons, and sometimes we're just flat out wrong. You obey your parents because it's the right thing to do, because the Lord said to do it. And number two, you do it because it's in your best interest. I'm going to show you why a little bit later, but that's all I'm going to say about the relationship for you guys, okay? Now, what I want to do is to talk to parents, and I need for us to get on a common ground when it comes to a starting point. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to lay a foundation because I think it's important in today's society. And I know Alan has talked about it through this series, but I want to make sure that we're all in agreement. So, it's important. This is an important starting point. Let's start with your child's inherent sin nature. Listen, since Genesis 3, Adam chose sin. He decided to rewrite for God what is right and wrong. And it says that sin passed to all men, right? And so your children have that inherent sin nature. Romans 5:12 says it this way. It says, therefore, just as one man's sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men because all sinned. Listen, your child doesn't come out of the womb with a blank slate. And I think we start sometimes with, my child is innocent and cute and lovely. And your child may be cute and lovely, but it's not innocent, okay? It's not a blank slate. It has to be rewritten from what it's born. Your child needs to be discipled, okay? Proverbs 22:15 says it this way: foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from them. Okay? There's foolishness that's bound up in your child. I can tell you, I had a child smear Vaseline all over my sofa. That's foolishness. We flip houses like we keep buying houses and go through the work of making them better. I remember one time we painted a wall, brand new paint job on this wall. We come back and it's a mural of markers and everything, the whole wall. And I'm like, dude, it's foolishness, right? Bound up in that child. And you have to drive the foolishness far from them. It is their innate nature. Your child is born with a default settingness towards selfishness, which they got from Adam. John 8:44 says it harsher, which is Jesus. He says, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. Every child outside of Jesus that has ever been born on this planet, because Adam wasn't born, is born into a family with Satan as the father. A spiritual family. They were born into the wrong spiritual family. Why is that important? Why is it important for us to land on that? Because here's the thing. There's a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to build this little cocoon around my child. I'm going to put up the walls as high as I can put them up, and I'm going to insulate them from the bad world. Because the bad world is the problem. No, they are the problem. They are in the wrong family, and they have the wrong influences. They have a father that is Satan inside of them, and they need you to disciple them towards Jesus. Okay? It's work. So, roll up your sleeves, because this is it, man. You don't just get to hit the default button. The default button is sin. Okay? So, I knew I was going to have a quiet room on this one, man. It's good stuff. So, here's the thing. We're going to dive into the one verse, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. You can throw it up on the screen. Let me say this. The Bible, we're going to dive into it, and the Bible doesn't have a chapter and verse on screen time. We're not going to find it. There's no chapter and verse on what you should think about social media. What you will find is a clear responsibility of the parents of children to disciple their children. That's what you're going to see. Now, the how, it's going to, when you're talking about it's got to cover 3,000 years, well, yeah, the how's going to change over that time. The responsibility does not. Okay? All right, we got something falling back there. Ephesians 6, verse 4 says this, "And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord." Let me say a couple of things. It talks to fathers. I don't believe it's talking only to fathers. This same Greek word is translated as parents in a different place. However, the Lord just spent in the verses right before this identifying the fact that the father is the head of the home. When Alan talked last week, he talked about the father's tendency towards unplugging. If this said, parents, your job is to train your children, well, us men would probably go, hey, it's happening, right? I go to work and I make the money. She's training the children. It says parents, it's being done. No, this is our job. Men, you don't get to unplug from this, okay? This is together. And men, you should be involved. There are two commands here. One is a negative imperative, the very first one, which means there is something you are to not do, right? Don't do this. Don't do this ever. And then there is a command that is an imperative command, and it tells you what you do. I said that on purpose because my whole family says, you just said do. That's our thing. So I figured since I'm talking family, let's throw it in there. So, right, there are things you are to do, and there are things you are not to do. And so the first one is the negative command that says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. Listen, in Colossians it says the exact same thing. It repeats it twice, which, by the way, the only command that's repeated twice to the parents. Don't provoke your children to wrath. Okay, and in Colossians it says that it'll lead to discouragement. How do you know? I start working through that. If you do your job right, parents, and you're actually creating boundaries for your child, and we're going to work through what that looks like from a boundary perspective, do you think you can do that without angering your child? Absolutely not. There are times you will be the worst person on the planet. And if your kid never looks you in the eye and says, I hate you, you're probably not doing it right. Okay? It will happen and it will hurt when it happens. Okay? But what this thing says, provoke not your children to wrath, it is an ongoing thing. It means that there is an ongoing thing that always pushes them towards anger. Now, let me say this. If you look back at all of the home that we've been talking about, we're talking about wives, you should submit to your husbands. Which means, don't be in conflict, right? Husbands, you're supposed to love, right? Rather than being angry. You should be loving. And then children, I want you, do what your parents tell you to do. And parents, don't provoke them. Don't make them mad for no reason. You want to know what he's saying? Our homes, you should just walk in the Spirit. Like if you go back and you look at the works of the flesh, it's contentions, it's dissensions, it is revelries, it is fighting, it is backbiting, it is these things, it is constant conflict. And what he says is, I want Christian homes to look like ones that aren't in conflict. If we just walk in the Spirit, we don't need all this. Just walk in the Spirit and love each other and work through it. And that's really what that's what the teaching is all the way through this thing. And so he says this, just don't provoke them. How do we do that? How do we provoke them? Let me just give you some practical things. And I wrote a few just like inconsistent discipline. I wrote that down, and I also go, man, I was inconsistent on purpose sometimes. So I want to free some of you up. When you look at how God parented his son Israel through the Old Testament, there are times when he shows him grace. And there are times when he doesn't, right? And so, like, like, I look and people are always like, you got to be consistent, you got to be consistent. And I'm like, yeah, but there are times when God isn't. And I don't really know what to do with that as a parent. And young enough, I was like, you know what? If I always knew what God was going to do in a given situation, you don't know what I can do to God? I can control him. I can go, I know what the consequence is for that, and therefore I'm willing to pay it. I'm good with it. And I am in control in that moment. As a parent, I decided I don't necessarily want to be all that predictable. There are times that I will show my kids grace, and I will tell them that. Whenever I talk about inconsistency, I'm talking about inconsistency usually because of one of two things. Should never happen. Should not be inconsistent because of your anger. You should not be inconsistent because of favoritism. Okay? Do you have the right as a parent to go, I'm going to show you grace in this moment? Absolutely. God does it over and over and over again to Israel. I told my kids, I'm not going to be always consistent because I don't want you to be able to control me. But we should be inconsistent for the right reasons. Okay, verbal criticism. Dude, you wield, as parents, a heavy, heavy sword. You should not tear down your child. Everybody else in this world is doing it. Build them up. Say positive things to them. Impossible standards. Listen, if you're a perfectionist, let me just tell you this. Perfection was met at the cross. That's it. You might think that you're coming unclose. Man, as a parent, your place should be, look, you should be touting the fact of your imperfection every second of the day. I'm imperfect. You're imperfect. It's just life. Because when you start creating perfection as a standard, you know what I want to do? I want to teach them what it looks like to be reunited to God in the midst of our imperfection. That's what I want to teach them. Lack of restoration, dude, that is painful. Do you know the Lord stepped out of heaven and was beaten and died to restore the relationship between you and him? And you're going to tell your child, yeah, I'm not going to restore this thing until I'm good. That doesn't work for me. That is not a clear picture of who God is. And the last one, I'll say this, and it'll destroy you, is hypocrisy. Don't hold your kids to a standard that you don't hold yourself to. You will destroy them. All right, the second commandment in there is imperative. It is to bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. You have two things there. Looking at the time because I know everybody's hungry, man. I got to get you out of here. Training, admonition, training. The word paideia is the Greek word. It is in the New Testament 6 times. It is never translated as training again. It is translated as chastisement. It is translated as chastise, and it is translated as instruction. And what you will find is it is training, education or training by disciplinary correction. So we'll dive into that one, which is discipline. The second one is admonition. That word is in the New Testament 3 times. It is always translated as admonition, and it is the idea of warning through teaching. So listen, as parents, we have the job and responsibility to discipline our children and to teach them. Okay? So what does it look like to biblically discipline a child? I'm just going to read through the verses in Proverbs, okay? I'm not going to make it hard. I'm not even going to expound on them a lot. I'm just going to read through them. Proverbs 3, verses 11 and 12 says, "My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father the son in whom he delights." Whom the Lord loves, he corrects. Always. Do all parents who discipline their children love their children? No. That's not what the passage says. If they love them, they will correct them. But just because they correct them, do they love them? No, we can do it for the wrong reasons. Now, here's the thing. What's the first reason that you obey your parents? You guys over here, what's the first reason you obey your parents? Because it's right. What's the second reason you obey your parents? Because it'll be well with you. Now, what if your parent disciplines you in anger? Is it still well with you to obey them? Now listen to me, I'm not talking about somebody who disciplines in an abusive way. I'm not having that conversation at all. Clearly, if somebody is abusing you, find somebody to have that conversation with, okay? But if somebody is creating unrealistic expectations, right? Or they're just angry that day. They're angry at the world and they take it out on you, and the consequences end up coming your way. Is it in your best interest to obey? It is. Let me tell you why. When you get out into the world, do you think your boss is going to care or have your best interest at heart when they tell you to do something? Absolutely not. Now listen to me. I have seen it over and over and over again. If my daughter dates somebody and he is like at odds with his dad, dude, I'm just telling you, that baggage doesn't leave you. I've watched it happen over and over and over again. I'm angry with my dad because he disciplines me in anger. Do you hear it? You end up being the same person. It just looks different. And what God says is this: when somebody is angry with you, choose to love them. When somebody doesn't forgive you, you choose to forgive them. Hard to do? Yes. That's what Jesus did. And so here's the thing. Like, it doesn't really matter the motive. What they're asking you to do may, and the discipline, yes. If it goes into abuse, it's a whole nother ballgame. But what God says is, man, if you will just deal with it and you will forgive and you will move on and you will just obey, it is in your best interest. I 100% believe it. If you're not carrying that baggage your whole life, dude, it is so in your best interest. Okay, Proverbs 13:24 says it this way. He says, "He who spares his rod hates the child," or spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. Listen, if you love your son, you will discipline them. And not just discipline them, you will do it promptly. What does that look like? Listen, we were growing up and we didn't do, I don't put us on a pedestal when it comes to parenting at all. But I will say this, our kids were pretty compliant at a young age. And so people would come to us and go, what'd you do? Well, I started smacking the back of their hands. And then I started flipping the back of their hands. Well, when did you start that? 9 months old. Well, I mean, what things did you spank them for? And I'm like, what age are you talking? Like 4. And I'm like, I never spanked my kids at 4. I started early. And if you start early, promptly, you don't got to do it for a long time. And it'd be like, you flip them on the back of their hands, doesn't that hurt? Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, I don't want them to ever want to do that again, right? And then when they get old, I don't have to do it. Didn't have to. And so I would say to you guys, man, do it promptly. Do it exactly when it happens, but also just do it early and often. You'll save yourself a lot of pain. Proverbs 19:18 says, chasten your son while there is hope and do not set your heart on his destruction. And that's where I was going to say, there is a window. Open that window early. Chasten them early while there is still hope, because there comes a point where you don't know what to do. And I will say this. Well, let's go to the next one. Do not withhold correction from a child. Oh, Proverbs 23:13 says, do not withhold correction from a child. And by the way, the people outside of the church love to shoot holes in us because of this verse. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. All right, some harsh language. Let me ask you this. What does the rod look like? In our brain, we read through this and we've got like the, whatever your experience was, that's what you have in your head. Let me say this. You can read through and it's not anywhere in the Bible as to what it looks like. And I think there's a reason. I think it looks different with every kid. I can tell you without hesitation, if my parents would have said the sole way that I am going to remove foolishness from Justin's life is through physical punishment, the only way that they would have done it would have been by putting me in the hospital and by putting them in jail. I looked my dad in the face when he was in the midst of trying to punish me and break my will, and I said, do what you want. You cannot hurt me. And he cried, and I won in my brain. It won't be well with me for very long on that. Here's the thing. You have to figure out what works for your child, okay? The rod of correction is different for every kid. Everything's on the table. Clark came out, and I'll talk a lot about Clark, and he's in the room, and I feel bad about that, but sorry, son. 2 years old, man. The kid wanted to fight. I mean, I remember sitting and watching Laura and him go at it one time, and I'm sitting on the other side of the room going, dude, this is me. This is me all over again. And I realized, dude, when he's fighting, what we're talking about is the fight. What we're not talking about is his failure. And that's the thing he doesn't want to talk about. And so we made a decision. At 2 years old, we decided we will not escalate anything with him. No escalation at all. We will de-escalate everything. And I learned the thing he hates more than anything is, let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you did wrong. Let's talk about why you did it. Let's talk about the consequences of that. Let's talk about what you should have done differently. Dude, I could talk to him for 5 minutes about that, and you could see him just squirming and like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I went, yeah, this is how we need to work with Clark. I say that to say this. Every kid's different. Your job is to break the will of your child. Do you know how to do it? You're the only one that has that opportunity. It is your responsibility, and you have to figure it out. I don't think that this passage is saying you find a rod and you go beat a child until he submits. I'm telling you that's a bad idea. The rod of correction needs to look different based on the child you're dealing with. Okay? Figure them out, man. It's your responsibility. Okay, where was I? Proverbs 29:15. The rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Listen, it's in your best interest to do this. When will they bring shame to you? When they're 20 years old and still living in your basement and playing video games. Or in jail. When you haven't taught them how to function in society. What it looks like to take orders from another person. We all take orders from somebody. Are you teaching your kid to do that? Proverbs 29:17 says, correct your son, he will give you rest. Yes, he will give delight to your soul. It's in your best interest to do this as well. Okay? I've seen people, their whole life, they're taking care of their kid. When they should have let go of the arrow, they're still, like, it's so much harder if you don't do it the right way. Okay? So my question is that I want to talk about is, what is obedience? This is something that was given to me, and I'm going to have to speed up a little bit here. This is so important for you to know as a parent. Okay? What is obedience? This was given to me young. This was given to my wife young. We lived in 2 different states. We have given it to our children. I have no doubt I want to look over at Clark and ask him right now, but I'm afraid he'll fail me on this one. But there are 3 adjectives. Obedience is, okay? And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you the verse. If your kids don't know this, you should write these verses down. You should go home. You should talk to them about them. You should read the stories, and then you should start saying, this is the new standard in our house. Okay? This is the new standard. I want you to tell me what obedience looks like, and then say, this is the standard. Okay? First, it is immediate, which means when I tell you to do it, you do it. When you count to 3, will God count to 3? No. If he tells you to do it, you do it. And when you say, I'm going to tell you 3 times, you're giving them a standard that may or may not be true. Are there times when God will show grace? Do you never show grace? No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but I will not define it as obedience. I will define it as grace at this point. Okay? I'm going to define it for what it is, disobedience, and I'm showing you grace. Okay? Immediate, I said. Numbers chapter 13, verse 14. You have the children of Israel. They've been enslaved for 400 years. God brings them out miraculously. They walk through the Red Sea. He parts the Red Sea. They go up. They receive the law. And then they go in, and there's an 11-day journey to Kadesh Barnea. And God says, I want you to go in, and I want you to drive out everybody that's there. And you got the Jebusites and the Amorites and the mosquito bites and everybody else on the other side of that thing. And it's like, I need you to go in and wipe them out. And by the way, it's not a blank slate in there, just like your kids. There's no blank slate. You got to go in and you got to drive them out. And there you go. Well, let's call time out. Let's send in some spies and let's check it out. They go in and they come back and they're like, dude, the people in there are huge. We can't take them. We're not going in. And God says, okay, turn and go the other way. That's fine. Every one of you will die in the wilderness. Your children will go in there, but you're not going in. And they're all like, whoa, time out, whoa. And the next day they decide, no, okay, let's obey. Let's go. And God said, no, I told you to turn now. Now you obey me and you turn and go into the wilderness. No, we're going to go up now. We've decided we're willing to do it, and so let's go. And they go up, and guess what? They lose. They run away, and you know where they end up going? Into the wilderness. Because obedience, they had their opportunity to obey. They chose not to do it. You can't do it the next day. It is immediate. It is exactly. Okay, there's another story. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 5. David decides he wants to bring the ark back to the city of Jerusalem. Good choice? Very good choice. The ark houses the presence of God. Let's bring it back to Jerusalem where it belongs. Great choice. So they throw it on a cart to bring it back to Jerusalem. Good choice? No, they were supposed to put poles in it, and the priests were supposed to carry it. Right? But it's a long journey. And I don't think that's going to be hard on them. So let's throw it on a cart. They throw it on a cart, and they're moving it along. It hits a bump, falls over, and there's a guy named Uzzah who puts his hands up to catch the ark. Seems logical, right? They're not supposed to touch the ark. And so he reaches up to catch it, and he dies because he touches the ark. Does that mean I'm supposed to be done? Yeah. He reaches up, touches it, and he dies. David gets really mad. Who was at fault? David was in charge. He put it on a cart. So David's mad at God because he disobeyed. He was obeying and bringing it back to Jerusalem. He just didn't do it exactly. Immediately, exactly, and the last one is with the right heart attitude. Philippians 2 verse 4 says, do all things without murmurings and disputings, which means your attitude matters. Okay? You do it when I tell you to do it, you do it exactly the way I tell you to do it, and I need you to do it with a good heart attitude. If you tell them anything other than that is obedience, you're setting them up for failure in dealing with the Lord. Okay? Because you're telling them that's how God views obedience, and he does not. In fact, Jesus, when he was on this planet, who were the most obedient people on the planet while he was here? It was the people he was ticked off at the whole time he was here. Right? That's what we would call obedience. The people we would say were obedient, he was mad at the whole time. They tried to the letter of the law, even adding stuff to the law, to the point that they are creating these rules around the rules. And he says, I'm ticked off at you guys. Why? Because of why you do it. Why? You fast and you make your face so that it looks like you're fasting so everybody sees. You pray so that everybody sees and so that you get glory from what you're doing. Right? They're doing what he said to do. Yeah, they're doing it with the right heart, wrong heart. It matters. And so listen, immediately, exactly, and with the right heart attitude, that's what obedience looks like. Does that mean you don't show grace? No, but you don't change the standard. You tell them, I'm going to show you grace, but this is not obedience. Make sense? Okay. So, the last thing I want to say is this, and it's a little rough, but I'm just going to say it, and then I'm going to walk away. I like to just throw grenades sometimes, like pull the pin and just walk away. So I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to pull the pin. Sometimes, and this is not directed at anybody, I've lived in 4 states, and it is everywhere. Parents love, in this day and age, to decide that the standard for discipline doesn't apply to them because of a medical diagnosis. There you go. There's the pen. It's not anywhere in the Bible. The standard doesn't change. Obedience doesn't change. Okay? I get that it is extremely hard. I was the kid who I had to come to church on a Sunday night, and I would literally, we had these like stadium-style seating, and I would flex my legs and lift my back end up off the chair, and I would see how long I could hold myself there, because I couldn't sit still. But I would sit there and just flex for 15 minutes. And it was work. If there was ever a person that would have a medical diagnosis in today's day and age, it was 100% me. And yet my parents never made me a victim, and they held me to the standard that God had for me. And they showed me grace at times because they knew it was hard, but they did not change the standard. Okay? If you change the standard, you are handicapping your child. Okay? There it is. There's the grenade. So the second thing, what does it look like to biblically train a child? So I'm going to go back, and by the way, to biblically train a child, we get to the place where we think like compliance is, why does it say both? Because compliance is not good enough. That's not the goal. Having a child that obeys is never the goal. What is the goal? Anybody, come on. What's that? Change, taught, yeah. Let me just say, that's it. Your goal is to disciple your children. Your goal is not to make compliant kids. Your goal is to teach them why. Everything you make them do, teach them why. So that when they get to the place where they're making these decisions for themselves, they can understand, I know why I'm doing this. Otherwise, as soon as you're out of the picture, they're going to do whatever they want to do. Right? That's why discipline and training is both. You got to have them both. So you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. And by the way, this is the Shema, the most prayed prayer in in the Jewish world. Every morning, there's a whole bunch of them that are starting right here. Still, 3,500 years later, they're going back to this as their standard for their home. Deuteronomy chapter 6 says this, in verse 6, it says, "And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up." Holy smoke. All right, we're just going to fly here. Jesus should not be a separate thing in your life. Okay? As you sit down, as you rise up, as you walk in the way. I decided at a young age, I did not want to be this place where, and to a fault, I 100% will say it, I don't want to be the home and where we're doing all these devotions. No, I want my dinner table to be a devotion. It's what I've always wanted. Haven't always carried that out. I've wanted to. I want my ride taking my son to middle school to be a devotion. I don't want to have to switch gears from life and say, okay, we're going to talk about Jesus now. No, Jesus is our life. I don't separate work from Jesus. I don't separate, that's just who we are, and that's what we talk about. Right? And I think that's what it's saying right here. That's how we're supposed to teach the Lord. So I got 3 questions for you. When do you have these conversations? For us, it was at the dinner table. And I know the dinner table is becoming less and less of a thing. And that's the biggest problem, is because that's where it normally has taken place. So for you, where is it happening? It has to happen. So, and then be strategic about it. Second question, do you use teachable moments or do you avoid them? Now I'll say this. We live in a day and age where risk is a bad thing. It's not bad. Pain is something we avoid at all costs. Like we rescue our kids way too fast. Right? I had 3 conversations with 3 different parents of adults this week. And they're like, hey, can you pray that this circumstance in my kid's life will be changed? How about I pray that your kid learns, and I literally said this every time. I think I frustrated 3 different people this week. How about I pray that your kid learns to walk in the Spirit in the midst of their conflict? That's what I'm going to do. And then I go on to say, listen, in your life, the pile of stones where God has changed your life, go back through it. The times when he has changed your character, is there pain attached to that? Almost always. If you protect your kids from all pain, you are handicapping them from growth. Listen, they're all teachable moments. When they have a friend who fails them, cool, teachable moment. I can go to Proverbs and find that. Like all the things that they go through, teachable moments. Let them play out and then teach. Some of us aren't very good at teaching. We don't know the word well enough to do it. And I would just say that's the problem. Like dive into it. Quit protecting your kids. I know it wasn't necessarily great for me to drink out of a fire hose and ride in the back of my dad's truck. Okay? I get that. I had stitches 6 times as a kid. But I was ready for the world. I knew when I could fall, I could get up. I knew pain was only temporary because my dad let me learn that. It was okay. I didn't die. So I say that to say there's a time and a place, okay? I'm not saying you let your kid run in front of a car. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying we can't always rescue them every time. Sometimes this is where the Lord works. I got a verse for you. Romans 5 says this, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that the tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. And we wonder why our kids don't have character and why they don't have hope, because we never let them experience tribulation. Okay? Quit rescuing them. Okay? Last question. Are you the person you are asking them to be? Listen, more things are going to be caught than they are taught. They will do what you do, not what you tell them to do. Okay? Matthew 5:16 says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. We always reference that as like, hey, this is about the outside world. No, this is your kids. Let your light so shine before your kids so that they will glorify your God. Proverbs 27 says, the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Listen, you want your children to be blessed? Cool. Be a person of integrity. Look in the mirror and say, am I the person that I want them to become? Ask that question. Now, in conclusion, I want to say this, man. I was reading through Psalm 23. Right? The shepherd's prayer, man. It's like this stuff. And I want you to know that, like, I'm reading through it, and I run across this little saying that I've said 1,000,000 times. And it hit me different because I was in the middle of this. And it says this. Psalm 23:4 says, David is writing, and he says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. For your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The rod of correction, the staff which guides me and tells me what to do and where to go. What David says to his father is whenever I'm in the midst of darkness and the valley, what comforts me is the fact that my father will correct me if I get out of line, and that he will guide me. These are the 2 things that we're responsible for, the rod and the staff. And what David says is this, man, I am so thankful. And I will tell you this, man, your kids will be too. In the good times, nope. They won't appreciate anything in the good times. You're just along for the ride. But when it hits the fan, they're going to go, man, I'm so glad I'm so glad that my parents gave me a Northern Star to guide me. And I'm so glad that when I get off track, they're going to help me get back on track. And I know that I can put my faith in that, and it will comfort them, even though they probably still won't give you credit for it. That's the job that we have as a parent. Lord, I love you. I thank you for your word, and I thank you that it still applies today just like it always has. There are times that I go, man, I'm thankful for the vagueness, because it amazes me how it applies over, all of the time and over all of the different groups. And Lord, I'm just thankful that you don't leave us guessing when it comes to parenting. Lord, we love you. Change us, and just continue to help us build good families. We love you. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen.